the Road, Part 3. Both nodding their heads followed Raj to the rear of the house. In the back, there was a spiraling staircase descending down into the basement area. Raj descended down the steps. Jerry and Glow followed, both looking at one another, as if to say, "This is so cool." Coming down the steps, they were immersed in another strangely illuminated and likewise furnished room. It was the same abstract glow, but down here, it was a harrowing burnt orange. It wasn't a large room. The most significant feature was 3 large leather-like chairs. The chairs were strategically placed in the center of the room. Looking about, they noticed the walls were sparse, except for a few paintings, all of which were indecipherable, appearing as a discordant mishmash of colors done in thick strokes, all of which possessed a violent and disjointed look about them. There was an array of strange speakers, all encased in the same almost tortured, dense, dark wood as the rest of the furnishings in the house. Raj turned to them. "You guys into sound?" He said this rather nonchalantly. "Got some awesome cuts of some really way-out tunes." "Dude!" yelled out Jerry, looking over smiling at his partner Glow. "Like totally. That's our gig, man. It's all about sound. Been roadies, but we got our own sounds, our own tunes." "We got some awesome shit," echoed Glow. Raj shook his head and walked over to a strange-looking console. "Have a seat." Saying this, he pointed to the 3 strange lounge-type chairs encased in the heavy dark wood. Jerry and Glow smiled, shrugging their shoulders as they walked over and settled into the heavy leather-like chairs. As Glow settled in, he immediately let out a loud, relief-filled groan. "Killer! This chair is like totally awesome." Jerry likewise let out a loud, pleasure-filled, ecstatic-filled groan. "Where have you been all my life?" Saying this to anyone that would listen. Raj pointed at the console, giving a cryptic smile. "Hold on, guys. The best part is yet to come." As they luxuriated in the heavily upholstered chairs, basking in the supreme ecstasy that was experienced as soon as they sat in them, they let the rapturous waves of comfort envelop them. "Dude, this is the most awesome chair I have ever sat in," declared Jerry, as he let never-before waves of pleasure roll over him. Raj walked over to the half-recessed console and hit a couple of buttons. Immediately, from the multiple speakers came out this totally ethereal, bizarre, and utterly captivating music. It was an aural experience neither of them had ever before experienced. It was impossible to explain. It began with a simple cello-like instrument, with a haunting, wailing-like sound. This was soon overlaid with other strange string instruments. This then was merged with a baleful, almost numinous wail, fading in and fading out. There were subliminal voices, all of them evoking a strange sense of displaced terror. As if the words being uttered told of some immensely horrid tale or deed. Then the sound set was surreptitiously invaded by drums, but drums like they had never heard. Deep, resonating, almost terrifying. This aural assault went on and on. There were more instruments, then sounds of people screaming, all mystically melded into the music, evolving into a harrowing subliminal wave. The sensations surpassed anything they had ever experienced. Listening, they found themselves entering a bizarre and almost hypnotic state. It wasn't at all unpleasant, on the contrary. The more they luxuriated in the sensation, the more they became one with the music. The sounds eventually evoking images and sensations affecting their entire bodies. It was incredible. They found themselves at one moment atop a pyramid, as Mayan or Aztec chants and images saturated their being. They let the narcotic, like heavy, fragrant tropical air, fill their lungs, eventually becoming pungent with the smell of blood mixed with the unmistakable smell of fear that only is produced from those about to be disemboweled. This was soon overlaid with visages of heavy stone gods, besotted with demonic faces. Then a mere moment later, it was the thundering sound of charging steeds, splaying sweat, nostrils flaring, encased in war armor. Sitting there being psychically distorted by the sounds, now convoluted with harrowing experiences. Her name was Beth. She was a sophomore at Baymore College. Her parents had money, so she was afforded the luxury of a small private room in the college dormitory. She was pretty, but in a plain sort of way. She kept her hair in a ponytail and wore little makeup. There were not many items on her wall, just a few pictures of birds. On her desk was a conspicuous picture frame, and in this frame, a recent-looking photo of her and a broadly smiling young man. He appeared a bit older than her and had a certain disheveled look about him, indicating a penchant for the indulgent life. From the picture, one could see from the way she was looking at him that she was very much in love with the man. Scrawled across the bottom of the photo was a note in florid handwriting: Beth and Glow. Keeping it live, she was alone in the room, sitting in the one large chair that faced out to the tall window that looked out to the night sky. She looked over to the picture and then back down to the thick biology book that was on her lap. She gave a sigh and then went back to looking out the window. She knew she shouldn't feel the way she did, that by all standards, he was wrong for her and probably every other woman out there. But still, she couldn't help but feel the way that she did. She knew he was almost hopelessly irresponsible and knew his dreams of being in a hot band were at best hopeless. But still, it was just this sort of devil-may-care attitude that she found so alluring. She had always done everything by the book, by the rules, whereas he did whatever seemed like a good idea at the time. She knew he was with his best friend Jerry, and they were on their way to California, where both of them were sure, this time, they were going to find that fame that had so far eluded them. As the momentum of the experience accelerated, catapulting them into the continuing realms of expanded consciousness, both realized this was way beyond a weird psychedelic experience, both now aware of its metaphysical ramifications. But both of them, try as they might, could not muster the energy or strength to escape the clutch of the chairs. There were no physical binds holding them, nor were there any real psychic binds. It was as if it was their own inner selves that were unable to muster the resolve to get up from the chairs. They knew they could talk. They knew they could look around. They could think. They could do all of that. They knew they could even get up at any moment and end the experience. But somehow these options seemed to elude both of them. The dissipation of the soul is not a sensation easily explained. It is as if the self, the ineffable essence, was being evaporated off, and in its place was a strange sort of shared experience. The entire idea of uniqueness, of differentiation, of distinctiveness, was dissipating away. They both realized without a sense of self, likewise, the entire concept of love was gone. Yes, that was it. This is what was flickering away. They were now becoming some part of a vast vacuum. As they let themselves surrender into the inexorable eddy of the ever-enticing swirl of the aural sound set, they had now given up all hope of extricating themselves from the luxuriant chairs. Sitting there, they became aware that a bizarre and plasma-like red viscous-looking material began to materialize out of the air around them. Watching transfixed, the material began to adhere to their bodies, as if a foglet around them. It was precipitating out of the ambient air. Both wondered if somehow it was exuding from the chairs. Increasing amount of the viscous material continued to accrete to them. They became aware. It had myriad layers of interconnected diamond like inner lattices, all complexly intertwined on the surface. It was truly a remarkable and somewhat ethereal material. As greater amounts of the material continued to accrete to them, both were still rendered immobile, still transfixed by the captivating music. The more they fell into its maw, surrendering to its mesmerizing presence, the more they felt their own sense of self continue to waft off. Forever gone, Glow began fighting the reverie as much as he could. He was now trying to call upon any and all powers that were at his disposal. He even now trying to evoke the power of heaven and God himself. But attempting to do this, he found himself as with Alzheimer's. He was finding it difficult to even cognate the idea of a supreme being or of the Savior. It was all collapsing into an innocuous state of fading recollections and experiences. The thought of escape would be in his mind for a moment, and the next swallowed up in a dream that seemed to compress time itself. An entire epoch crushed into a moment. It was as if there was no time. Rather, this was all one moment. It was only our puny human experience that perceived it as a fractured continuum. The experience had become the moment. They were both here and everywhere else, all at the same moment. There was no release. There was no reprieve. They both continued to sink further and further into this new experiential infinity. As the sense of self continued its transmutation into this new ineffable experience of timelessness, of infinite vacuum, all with a loss of identity. It was becoming impossible to conceive of a sense of deity. They were becoming the deity. As the red viscous material continued covering more and more of them, they noticed, through the interludes of their reveries, that the intricate diamond-like lattices, now covering nearly all of their bodies, began radiating with complex patterns and began giving off strange, glowing hues. It was as if it was alive. Then it came to both of them, with a horrifying realization that this ectoplasmic-like substance was not just a bizarre, unknown living material, but it was rather an abstract life form. But this form had a definite purpose. Both realized this at the same moment. A new and untold horror overtook them.